Welcome back to the show. Just to remind you, there is live football on tonight as well. The second semi-final of the Africa Cup of Nations still scoreless with 32 minutes played between Cameroon and Egypt in the Olembe Stadium in Yaoundé. But I'm delighted to say joining us on the line as ever is the one and only John Giles. John, very good evening to you.
Evening, Richie.
How are you getting on?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Always a plus. I mean, yeah, yes. Always a plus. It's been another busy week. Obviously, we had transfer deadline day and all that kind of stuff. But I guess the story that's kind of plumped up out of nowhere really in the last couple of days, and it seems to gather momentum and kind of as we speak is even gathering further momentum. Roy Keane is in the frame certainly for the vacancy at Sunderland. They sacked Lee Johnson at the weekend. They lost 6-0 to Bolton Wanderers in League One, but they're still third in the table there. Wigan above them do have games in hand, but it hasn't been a disaster by any means under Johnson so far this season. But the first number on their speed dial appears to be the former Republic of Ireland captain. Some people will be surprised because he's been such a prevalent figure in the media for the last few years. Are you surprised to see him in the conversation for a manager's job?
No, I'm not, Richie. I remember reading the paper there maybe a couple of weeks back where he was questioning some of the people who were being offered managerial positions, and he wasn't. So he might want to get back into it. Well, if he's going to be interviewed for the job, he obviously does. So I'm not that surprised. I was surprised when I read that he was interested in getting back into management again, to be quite honest.
Why so?
Well, he's doing very, very well on the television. And managerial positions are very, very, very difficult jobs, difficult situations, especially nowadays for clubs like Sunderland, who are a big club and a huge support, don't have the financial backing that's needed today. And I don't think Sunderland have that financial backing in relation to Chelsea and Manchester United and Manchester City to do what's needed to be done, Richie. I think it's more difficult job now, a far more difficult job now than when he was at Sunderland the last time out.
Yeah, they were a yo-yo club around then. I mean, he took them over when they were in the Championship. They won the Championship by a couple of points from Birmingham. They went up. He spent a lot of money. The likes of Craig Gordon, Kevin Jones, Andy Reid. There were more came in that summer. Michael Chopper came in for $5 million from Newcastle. So there was money spent by Keane in his last Premier League season with Sunderland. But that Premier League season was a struggle. He was gone by the following December and then pitched up at Ipswich. And it's like, I know obviously he's been assistant to Martin O'Neill at both Ireland and at Nottingham Forest most recently, but it's now 11 years I think. It's like he left Ipswich in 2011 and he was clearly a frustrated figure there with the tools that he had to hand.
Yes.
He's a difficult man to please, as we all know, and it would be a difficult man to please, you'd imagine, in League One. Like, it just struck me that he doesn't have that mentality that some people have where they can make that bridge between the quality that they had as a player and the demands that they put on themselves as a player and the demands that are on people at a lower level.
Well, you must say you went back to 2008 when he was doing the job at Ipswich.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, it's got worse now, in my opinion, Richie. More difficult, not worse. It's more difficult now because the big transfers are going to the big clubs, and if you look at it, the richer the club, the more successful they are. I mean, you do get somebody like Brighton and various teams who are doing okay, but Sunderland would be in that bracket now. I mean, they were one time one of the richest clubs in the country. This is years and years ago.
Back in the 50s and 60s, yeah.
Yes, but not now. And if he goes to Sunderland, anybody going to Sunderland now, they have a big job on their hands to get promotion for a start. And if and when you get, say, young players coming in, the big clubs are snapping them up. It's very, very difficult to build a team. And if Roy Keane goes into, or anybody goes into London, it's going to be very, very hard to build a team because if you produce any young players, they're going to be nicked. They're going to be nicked, and that's what's happening. That's why you've got the big clubs in the Premier League, the Chelseas and the Manchester Uniteds. They can afford to buy the best players and have their own young players. That's the thing, and it's more difficult for the smaller clubs now because years ago you had them under contract. Now after they sign a 2 or 3 year contract, as we know, they're free agents. So there's very, very little going for them in the lower divisions to produce young players, Richie.
Yeah.
If they produce an outstanding young player, before you know it, they'll have an agent and they'll tell the club they're not signing the contract again, and away they go. So it's very, very difficult. And I think, you know, it on a personal level, I think Roy Keane has done a really good job on the panels. I think he could, and is having a very, very good career in that particular line, rather than going back to Sunderland with all the problems and all the things that are bound to happen while he's there. But again, that's up to him, Rich, if he wants to do it. But I mean, Sunderland, they're doing okay in their division. But it's going to be, if you look at the Premiership, the big clubs, the top 6 as they call them, unless he gets one of those jobs from the Sunderland job, having done a very good job, is the only way out to really compete at the top level.
He's been in the media so long now. Like, I think most people and younger listeners might think of Roy Keane purely as a media figure. They kind of know of the player and the reputation that he had as a player, but their most immediate knowledge of Roy Keane is from social media clips, from what he says on TV on a Sunday afternoon on Sky or on ITV, and the kind of the concept of him as a manager is alien to a lot of younger people. And that's the thing I'm kind of curious about, if he's too much of a media figure to go back into management, because like I guess you can sympathise to a degree. Like, you were a manager who transitioned into media, like you were doing a lot of media work, say in by the time 86 rolled around, right, late 85, and the FAI were looking for a new manager, and you know, you were obviously involved in the conversations before Jack got the job. Like, I don't know what your thoughts were then. Would you have found it difficult after being such a public media figure, writing columns in the press?
Well, some of the people from the FA approached me to put my name forward.
Yeah.
But I didn't do it with any great feeling. I didn't really want to do it. I was in the television, Richie, and I was happy doing that because I was a relatively short time in management. I never liked management. I didn't like it. It's a very, very difficult job. And you have to make some very, very big decisions, which are absolutely, well, can be very, very cruel. You know, you release players, you don't sign young players. I never really took to management when I was in it. And when I got into the television and going into television, I was enticed to put my name forward for the Irish job. But to be honest, I didn't want it. I was happy doing what I was doing on the television.
But like, that's the thing. Would management be a far harder ask? Like, we're watching Steve Bruce this evening's after getting the West Brom gig, and he's somebody who's like, who's management is in his blood now. He probably doesn't know when to stop. But Keane's been out of it for 11 years, which is a lifetime in terms of football. Yeah, but
maybe he wanted to get back into it, Richie. We don't know. I mean, I don't know. I met Roy Keane a few times. I can honestly, I don't know him at all, really. But I did, you know, he did an article in the paper within the last 3 weeks where he was posing the question, why aren't nobody coming for me? Or words to that effect. Yeah. So maybe over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, he might have wanted to get back into management.
Do you see him as having the temperament to be a successful manager in the modern day?
Well, you know, if you go back a few years when he was first at Sunderland, I mean, he did take them from the second division into the first division. Yeah. What was then the first? I think maybe the Premiership. So that was a really good job. And then I think he fell out with the chairman at Sunderland, which would happen. And his next job, I think, was Ipswich. You know, Ipswich was always going to be a very, very difficult job. I mean, they were never they were a top club at one time, but when he went there, I think they were in the second division. And it's very, very difficult to make a successful club that nowadays, particularly, that doesn't have the resources to do what needs to be done. So maybe he always wanted. I mean, at one stage he said, "There's no way he would want to go on the television."
And now look,
and did. But anyway, that's what he said at the time. So maybe Richie, he always wanted to get back into management and didn't get the offer.
Yeah.
We don't know. You know, I mean, I don't know Roy Keane really at all. But I'd like to ask him the question, like, over the years that he's gone on to television, would he have been seeking a job, or did he want a job at that particular time? And maybe this is the first opportunity to come along for him to go back into management.
He quite possibly feels that there's a point still to prove in management, that the way the Ipswich gig ended for him mightn't have been the best, that he was an assistant in his last 2 jobs, and that the Forest gig, like, he was only there for 5 months under Martin O'Neill, and that seemed like, from the outside looking in, that looked like their Republic of Ireland reign in fast forward. Like, they went from the messiahs to this is going pretty badly, playing ugly football, and let's just, call it a day and move on. So maybe those intervening, it's going to be 3 years now since he left Forest, has given him enough of an itch to want to get back in.
Well, it could. Maybe he always had the itch, Richie. That's what I say. We don't know, and he just wasn't offered the jobs. Now this one is coming along. Maybe he thinks, well, this is an opportunity to get back into. I want to do it. I'm not enjoying the television as much as I would do in management. I only talk my own point of view. I was the opposite way around. I enjoyed the television more than I did as management, and never went back into it. But that was my choice. But his choice might be totally different. He might think, well, I go to Sunderland and I can do a good job there.
Less heartache on the telly, I believe, John.
Definitely. I know there was big decisions to be making management in levels, dealing with young players that you weren't going to sign pro, letting players go. They had been all that was involved in management, and I obviously didn't like that side of it. I never really enjoyed management, to be honest.
Okay. One man who seemingly does is Frank Lampard. He's jumped back in. He's gotten back on the roundabout. He's in at Everton, appointed there on a 2.5-year contract, I believe, just at the start of this week and on deadline day, and doing a bit of business as well. He came in essentially wanting to bring in players, and Donny van de Beek is one of those. Dele Alli is another. But it's a big job for Frank Lampard, because Everton, from the top down at least anyway, seems to be lacking in organisation. They've made some terrible buys in the transfer market in the last few years, so to clean up the mess that they currently find themselves in is a big job for Lampard. But he did an okay job at Chelsea. I think he was never going to match the expectations that were there, which were pretty high. He did an okay job at Derby, brought them to the brink of promotion as well. How do you think this is going to go for him?
I think it's a good appointment for him. There's lots and lots of potential at Everton, as we know. They're one of the great clubs, Richie. Depending if he gets the conditions that he needs to do the job. I think what's happened to the previous managers in the last few years at Everton, they had a director of football who I believe was doing all the buying and selling, and didn't leave it to the manager to get on with the job. Now, I think Frank is in a position at the moment, and Frank would know the game well enough now to know what needs to be done in management, to make that one of the conditions that I'm going to be in charge of the comings and goings here. And I think Everton are in such a desperate position, they would give him those conditions where they wouldn't give it to somebody else in the past. And, he did a very good job at Derby. I think he was on the right way at Chelsea. So he has promised, and he certainly has shown a lot of promise as a manager. And I think he will do well. I think Van de Beek is a good loan situation. The Dele Alli situation, I wouldn't be too sure about.
Why is that?
Because I think Dele Alli hasn't really played for the last at least 2 seasons.
Played well, you mean? Yeah.
Played well.
Yeah.
He had Jose Mourinho, who didn't want him. After a while, Antonio Conte, 2 of the best managers in the world, wouldn't have him because he wasn't doing his stuff. Now, I hear him in the paper today saying, he's glad to get to a manager. Dele Alli hasn't done his stuff in the last 2 years. And I think it might be no coincidence that he's a very, very promising player, a very, very talented player, Richie. There's no doubt about that. And in his early days, he looked a real player. But it might be coincidence, it might be not. But when he signed his new contract, which was a very lucrative contract, I believe, I don't think he's kicked a ball since.
Yeah, his form went off a cliff. I'm not sure if there are underlying reasons for that.
But he wasn't trying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. You see him out there. He's a very talented lad, and you got Jose Mourinho and Conte. The 2 of them wouldn't have him. And I watched him myself from my own perspective. I don't think he was having a go. I think he got this big contract, and he just was strolling around. So it's no coincidence. Mourinho, Dele Alli at his best is a real player. And for Mourinho not to have him, and then Antonio Conte not to have him, let him go. He obviously wasn't doing his stuff. Now he's writing in the paper, he's glad to get it to a new manager, and he'll do this, that and the other. Well, we'll wait and see. I think he will do well for a while. to show that it wasn't me, it wasn't my fault at Spurs that I wasn't in the team. It was the manager's fault. But I mean, I wouldn't be putting my life on him.
Well,
after 6 months or 8 months to be doing this stuff.
Well, like, if anything is going to light a fire under him, it's the deal that he signed at Everton, because like 4 years ago, with the form that Dele Alli was in, we would have presumed that by 25 he was getting his €100 million move to Real Madrid or to Juventus or whomever is going to be able to pay that kind of money. And instead now he finds himself moving down in the Premier League, with all due respect to Everton, and is on a deal whereby Everton won't fork over a penny until he reaches 20 appearances, at which point they'll give 10 million.
That's the club, though.
Yeah, but that kind of shows where Dele Alli's stock is at.
It doesn't bother to him. I mean, the fact is he'll be signing when he wasn't doing his stuff he was on a poor contract, and then he got a very, very, very good contract. And when he got, whether it be a coincidence or not, when he got that really good contract, he stopped playing. Yeah. Now, he's gone to Everton now, and he's blaming the managers before him and people at Spurs that he wasn't playing as well. It was their fault. Now, I think he'll start playing well, at least for a while, for Frank Lampard, so as you can say, there, I told you, I'm back to form now. It was the manager that I played under before. But he's got the contract. You know, he got the big contract a few years ago. And that's why I think he stopped playing. Yeah,
he seems very friendly anyway, at least to the initial signs of him heading back into Everton and those videos that they've released so far. So from Dele Alli's perspective, I mean, the talent is there. It's just a matter of application, I guess. Speaking of talent,
it's total application. That's what I'm saying. I mean, if he'd applied himself, he was a few years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, he was one of the outstanding players in England and had a great future in front of him. Right? Now, why is he being loaned out and given away by Spurs, who've had two of the best managers in the world who won't have him? He wasn't trying. He wasn't doing his stuff, Richie. So, like, the contract he's got at Everton, they're virtually letting him go for nothing.
For nothing, yeah.
And they want to get rid of him. Well, you don't let great players go, or players of his potential go, unless they're not doing their stuff. And he hasn't been doing his stuff for at least 2 years. So, but he's blaming it on the managers that he's had. That's why I think he'll do well for a while here with Frank Lampard. I don't know if he'll continue to do it to show that it was the manager's fault that he wasn't doing it at Spurs. And that's not true. It was his fault. He just hasn't been doing it, and he has all the ability in the world, and he stopped playing for some reason.
Yeah, football, of course, on Off the Ball is brought to you thanks to Sky. You can watch Everton take on Brentford in the FA Cup this Saturday live, only on Premier Sports. Now, Brentford won't have Christian Eriksen involved, John, but what a story this is. Back in football, Thomas Frank, according to the interview in the Times today, saying that he basically picked up the phone in December and said, Christian, do you fancy coming playing for Brentford? And that's how it started, and we find ourselves 7-8 months removed from those horrific scenes in Copenhagen to one of the feel-good stories of the year.
It's great. It's great. I mean, Eriksen is a real player. I mean, again, I'm only going back, I tell you. But look at what he's come through to play in relation to Dele Alli not playing where he's at Spurs. You know, this is a great story. And he's a terrific player anyway. But apparently he was dead for 5 minutes, Richie.
Yeah.
And he's coming back. I mean, the reason he's not in Italy because they have a rule there that if you have an ICD, you can't play. I mean, that's a medical situation, I think. Yeah. But Thomas Frank, the manager of Brentford, who's done a really good job, apparently knows him. He had him at the under-17s, and there are 8 Danish players there. But the fact that he's playing football again and wants to play football and give it his best, this is a real football story. Never mind Dele Alli messing about doing and wasting his ability, in my opinion, unless he really picks it up now in the future. But to see Christian Eriksen, to have to go through what he went through, Richie, and come back, obviously he loves football, loves the game, wants to do it. You know, this is a great story. One of the real comebacks in football that I hope, and I'm sure he will, if he was anywhere near as good as he was before he had this particular situation. He was a terrific player, one of the best midfield players in the world, and I hope he comes back to where he was before. Yeah. At least he's back and he's having a go. That's it. It's a great story, Richie.
Yeah, we've had a couple of dark stories this week, so to have one that's just pure goodness and enthusiasm, and I guess it's just fantastic to see, basically, to see a player like that, Christian Eriksen, given what he's been through, come back. Listen, John, absolute pleasure as always.
Okay, Richie. Thanks again.
We shall talk to you next week. We'll have more after these.
Football on Off the Ball.
With Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more. Live on Sky Sports.
The Pat Kenny Show.
Amy Foley was seriously and systematically abused by her father, Michael O'Donoghue, from the age of only 8. But she bravely spoke out when she was aged 18 and subsequently reported him to the Gardaí.
I cannot stress enough, this man had everything planned. That's what hurts so much more, because it broke me that the system couldn't see that.
The Pat Kenny Show.
With Mater Private Network.
Weekdays at 9 a.m. on News Talk.
The average attention span of a human is 6 seconds. 123inc.ie deliver your office supplies next day from Dublin, so you can buy local and still... Oh look, a squirrel!
123inc.ie. Okay then, who's got my lines? Thanks. Right now would be a good time to find your local Dacia dealer. Now hang on, this isn't a movie here, is it? No. At Dacia, we don't make movies, we make cars. Like the new Dacia Sandero and Sandero Stepway. Says here, on the road from just €30 a week? Yeah, nice. Offer is made under a hire purchase agreement. Payments drawn monthly. Terms and conditions apply. See dacia.ie.
The world of work is changing and organisations are evolving. Businesses need leaders with resilience, insight and integrity. An MBA from UCD Smurfit School develops leadership skills in a global context. Now is the time to transform your career. Join our virtual MBA Insights event on